Do you really think I don't know what you've done? Inez's expression stiffened. What did he find out? But then she thought that Diana was gone. And as long as she refused to admit anything, what could Alberto do? So she pretended to be calm and said, "What are you talking about? I didn't do anything." "Alberto, why did you suddenly terminate the engagement? Did Diana say something to you? You know she's always disliked me. What she says is just childish talk and can't be taken seriously." Alberto didn't want to waste words with her and directly shoved the chat logs between her and Diana in front of her. She was shocked and stared at the phone for a long time before screaming, "It's fake. How could I say such things? Alberto, you have to believe me. This isn't what I said. How could Diana frame me with fake chat logs?" Alberto was almost amused by her shamelessness. "Are you suggesting I retrieve your communication records right now?" "No." Inez shook her head desperately. Seeing that she couldn't hide it anymore, she rushed over and hugged his leg, crying loudly, I didn't mean to. Alberto, Diana has always refused to accept me. I was just too concerned about you. I wanted to marry you so much." Alberto pinched her chin and lifted it, his face cold. "Go back and tell your father, Jiangsheng, that Alberto's clan is calling off this marriage. The responsibility lies with you. Inez, your Jiang family must publicly admit today that the annulment of the engagement is your fault and issue a public apology. If I hear even a whisper of outside discussion against Alberto's clan, the Jiang family can forget about getting another project in Jiangsheng." Inez looked at Alberto in horror. "You can't. Dad will beat me to death. Alberto, please, don't abandon me. I won't dare again. I'll help you bring Diana back. I'll kowtow to her and apologize. Please don't call off the engagement." Alberto smiled mockingly. "Don't worry. I'll make sure Jiangsheng leaves you alive. When Diana comes back, I'll let you kowtow enough." Inez was driven out of the ward before she could say another word. She walked out with tears in her eyes, filled with resentment towards Diana and unwillingness. She was only one step away from marrying Alberto. It was all that vixen's fault. If she knew where that vixen was, she would sell her to a brothel for seducing men. She walked aggressively to the elevator, when suddenly a pair of hands dragged her into the stairwell. "You filthy woman! Where's the money?" Inez was slapped across the face. Looking closely, she saw the yellow-haired man who had kidnapped her and Diana a few days ago. She was shocked. "What are you doing here?" The yellow-haired man spat. "Do you think I wanted to come? Where's the 5 million you promised?" Inez said through gritted teeth. "I said I'd give it to you when I married into Alberto's clan." The yellow-haired man sneered. "Stop pretending. Everyone knows you were dumped by President Qin. Still dreaming of marrying into a wealthy family. I don't care. I want my 5 million, not a penny less. Otherwise, I'll tell President Qin that you hired me to kidnap his little darling and frame her. No, this must not reach Alberto's ears. Otherwise, she would truly have no way to survive." Inez gritted her teeth. "I'll give you the villa at Binjiang Court. It's worth more than 5 million. Just keep your mouth shut." The yellow-haired man's face immediately lit up. That villa could sell for at least 10 million. He patted Inez's face. "I knew Inez was a straightforward person. Let's go. We'll transfer the ownership now." Just as he pushed open the stairwell door, he was suddenly punched to the ground. Ouch! Who? Which fool doesn't want to live? Inez saw Alberto standing at the door with a grim face and retreated in terror, trembling against the wall. "Alberto, it's not what you heard. I can explain." Alberto stepped on the yellow-haired man's hand and approached her step by step, looking at her trembling form with burning anger. This was the person who had deceived him with shoddy acting and driven Diana away. How could he have been so foolish to believe this woman and not believe Diana, whom he had raised himself? No wonder she left him so resolutely, that he had disappointed her, that he looked at the woman trembling before him, a cruel arc appearing at the corner of his mouth. "Good news. Your father doesn't have to drag his family out to apologize publicly. The Jiang family of Jiangqing will disappear tonight. And you, Inez, will live in poverty for the rest of your life and never think of stepping into high society again." Inez collapsed to the ground, watching Alberto's departing back. She couldn't help but shout sharply, "Alberto, you can't do this to me. It's not my fault. You're too cowardly to face your own feelings. And you chose me again and again, which is why you broke her heart. You're the one who forced her away. Alberto's heart began to ache violently again. He clutched his chest, gasping for breath, his eyes stinging. He knew he was the real culprit. No matter the cost, he would find Diana, whether in heaven or on earth. No matter whose daughter she was, and what their relationship was. In this lifetime, she could not leave him. Hashtag chapter 13. At this time, Diana had just finished her first simulated flight experience and was with the group of volunteers on a plane bound for the western regions. Everyone was flying for the first time, chatting excitedly about their experiences in the space capsule. The man next to Diana, however, was very quiet. He was tall and burly, sitting beside her like a mountain, creating an invisible sense of pressure. She was already somewhat wary of strange men, and she kept even further away from men who looked aggressive like him. The man glanced at her faintly, then leaned back and closed his eyes to rest. She breathed a sigh of relief and turned her head to look out the window. It was raining in the clouds, and the window was covered with raindrops. Midway through the journey, the plane suddenly lurched, scaring Diana, who gripped her seatbelt tightly. The broadcast began to announce, "Ladies and gentlemen, please be advised. Our plane is currently passing through an area of unstable airflow and will experience continued turbulence. Please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts." Immediately afterwards, the plane suddenly began to shake violently, almost throwing people out of their seats. The cabin was instantly filled with panic. Diana had never encountered such a situation before and held onto the back of the seat in front of her for dear life. Had she just barely said goodbye to her old life, only to end up here? Various horrifying images of plane crashes flashed uncontrollably through her mind. Her brow furrowed, her heart pounded, and her breathing became rapid. In the midst of the dizziness, a large, bronze-colored hand pulled down an oxygen mask and placed it over her nose and mouth. "Relax. Take deep breaths. Diana, don't be nervous. It's all right." A low, calm male voice vibrated against her eardrums, and she involuntarily obeyed. A large, powerful hand patted her back rhythmically, gradually calming her panicked heart. A few minutes later, the plane passed through the turbulent zone and returned to stability. Diana then realized that she was almost entirely leaning against the man's chest, her hand still tightly clutching his arm. She quickly let go, revealing a pair of red handprints on his thick arm. She was a little embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I was too nervous." The man chuckled softly. "It's all right." He naturally took off her mask, and Diana felt him pat her head reassuringly. Then he got up and went to check on the others one by one. Diana touched her warm head, unsure if she was imagining things. When the man was inspecting the front, a girl with curly hair boldly asked, "Big brother, are you the training camp's instructor?" Many people looked over curiously. He scanned the group and said calmly, "I prefer you to call me Instructor Lou. My name is Ryan, and I'm responsible for all of your training this time. We just had an exciting start. Remember this feeling, and I hope the future training won't be too stimulating for you." "Great. It's the devil instructor. We're saved. Wow. My heart is already racing. Are you sure it's not because you're captivated by the instructor's handsomeness? Instructor Lou, do you have a girlfriend?" When the last question came out, everyone quieted down, anticipating his answer. After all, Ryan had an outstanding appearance and a tough temperament. He was the kind of rugged man with overflowing security and hormones, very popular with girls. Diana also had a gossipy heart, hiding in the crowd and secretly looking at him, who knew his eyes were like radar, instantly capturing her. She quickly looked away, pretending not to be looking, secretly perking up her ears to listen. A trace of a smile flashed in Ryan's eyes, and he said, "I'll answer this question after you graduate from the training camp." Boo! The crowd made sounds of disappointment. Diana also turned her head to continue looking out the window. The rain had stopped, and the sunshine above 10,000 meters was particularly brilliant. Someone sat down in the seat beside her. Ryan looked at the back of the head facing away from him and couldn't help but reach out and smooth a stray strand of hair. that had been messed up by the oxygen mask. Diana saw the man's movement from the reflection in the glass, holding her breath nervously, but strangely didn't dodge. She belatedly realized that she seemed to be no longer afraid of him. Was it because the brief reliance during the turbulence had dispelled her wariness? Or was it when he spoke that she felt a trace of familiarity? Diana. Her heart skipped a beat. Here. She replied hastily. A low, pleasant laugh came from above her head. She inexplicably blushed a little. Ryan glanced out the window and told her, "It will be a good day today." Diana looked at the rolling sea of clouds and felt that her gloomy heart, like the sky after the rain, had cleared up. Chapter 14. When they disembarked the plane, the fickle plateau unexpectedly displayed a gentle side. The winter sun shone on the snowy plateau, and a sense of vastness and grandeur swept over them. Unfortunately, Diana was in no mood to appreciate it. Most of the volunteers showed varying degrees of altitude sickness and collapsed along the way to the base. Diana also felt tightness in her chest, nausea, and a splitting headache. "Diana, open your mouth." A straw was placed between her lips, and a warm, large hand touched her forehead. Ryan instructed her, "No fever. Drink this rhodiola. It will make you feel better. And this, ginseng slices. Hold them in your mouth after drinking." Diana sipped the rhodiola oral liquid, raising her eyelids to see him get up and leave. He was too tall, and it was cramped for him to move around in the vehicle. But all the volunteers in the vehicle needed him to take care of them. The curly-haired girl looked at Ryan pitifully. "Instructor Lou, I feel so unwell. Can you sit next to me and give me some comfort?" Diana silently put the ginseng slices in her mouth. Ugh, they were so bitter. Ryan, facing the girl's slightly red eyes, took out a box of rhodiola and placed it in her hand. "We instructors only give punishments, not comfort. Diana, if you feel unwell, drink more of this." Diana pouted and reluctantly accepted the entire box of rhodiola, biting into one fiercely. Diana couldn't help but smile. This Ryan was too much of a straight man. So happy? Not feeling unwell anymore? Ryan, who had finished his round of inspection, caught Diana's smile as soon as he returned. She quickly shook her head and closed her eyes, leaning back in her seat to rest. Ryan smiled and naturally rested her head on his shoulder as the vehicle turned on the winding mountain road. Diana felt a little embarrassed, but she was too uncomfortable and didn't want to fuss, so she simply pretended to be asleep. Ryan's phone vibrated. He opened it and saw a message from the professor. "Have you seen Diana? She's young and heartbroken. You must take good care of her." Ryan turned his head and looked at Diana's fluffy head. His sharp brows relaxed, and he replied with one hand, "She's very well behaved. I will take good care of her." By the time they entered the base, it was already late. Everyone who was suffering from altitude sickness was listless. Ryan informed them of the next day's training time and let them eat and rest as soon as possible. Diana really didn't have much appetite and went straight back to the dormitory. Just as she finished unpacking and lay down, there was a knock on the door. She opened the door and saw Ryan. "Instructor Lou, is there anything I can do for you?" His dark eyes gazed at her intently. "Didn't you eat?" Diana shook her head. "I can't eat." He took out a thermos and a lunchbox and handed them to her. "Eat at least a little. After altitude sickness, you need to pay special attention to nutrition. Training starts tomorrow, and your body won't keep up if you don't eat. I know you don't have an appetite now. This is sweet tea and yak butter cheese. Eat a little if you get hungry at night. It can quickly replenish energy." Diana was a little stunned. Ryan raised his hand, as if he instinctively wanted to pat her head, but he forcibly restrained himself, nodded to her, and left. Diana looked at the things in her hand, thinking, didn't he say that instructors don't take care of people? Just as she was about to close the door, Diana suddenly appeared outside. The dormitory was a double room, and Diana was her roommate. She smiled at Diana. Diana glanced at the things in her hand, snorted, and walked into the room with her head held high. Diana rubbed her forehead. She's being seen as a rival in love. It's only the first day. What a heartbreaker. Using a similar idiom to Lanyan Hoasoi, to imply Ryan's charm is causing trouble between the girls. She closed the door and went inside, opened the lunchbox, and placed it in front of the sulking Diana. Do you want to eat? Instructor Lou said we should eat together. Diana looked at her suspiciously. Really? Wasn't it specially delivered to you? She repeatedly waved her hand. Of course not. Instructor Lou treats everyone equally. Diana pouted and stared at the box of cheese for a long time, then picked up a piece and took a big bite. She mumbled, even if it was for you. I'm not afraid. I'm going to compete with you fairly. Diana chuckled. She had seen her swallowing hard. She clearly craved the cheese. What a glutton. ## Chapter 15. On the first day of training, Ryan agreed to let them adapt gradually, starting with the simplest vestibular training. The trainees had to wear blindfolds and sit on a multi-axis rotating chair that spun 360 degrees at a speed of 2 seconds per rotation, accompanied by various movements up, down, left, right, forward, and backward. This simulated the weightlessness and spatial disorientation experienced by astronauts in space, thereby improving the trainees' resistance to motion sickness. It seemed simple, and some even thought it resembled the giant frisbee ride at amusement parks. Eager to try it out. As a result, no one could last more than 30 seconds. 22 volunteers vomited 23 times. One person even threw up again while watching Ryan rotate for 15 minutes. Everyone's image was completely ruined. Iris couldn't even last the 2 seconds it took for Ryan to help her down, and vomited directly on him. Diana, seeing her expression, as if she wished she could die on the spot, felt deeply sympathetic. Which young girl would want her crush to see her like this? Ryan, however, remained calm, presumably having seen many such scenes. When it was Diana's turn, Ryan received a phone call and left. She quickly climbed onto the chair and had the teaching assistant press the switch. 25 seconds later, with the world spinning around her, she couldn't withstand the dizziness and pressed the emergency stop button, staggering off the chair. Seeing stars, the contents of her stomach were already surging into her throat. Before she could even take a step with her weak legs, a vomit bag was already handed to her, and mouthwash was tucked into her pocket. She buried her head and vomited everything out. A familiar large hand began to pat her back again. Diana was stunned. Ryan had returned. A thought inexplicably rose in her mind. She didn't want to appear so embarrassing in front of him. So, without raising her head, Diana walked to the trash can with her head down, like a thief, tied up the vomit bag and threw it in, quickly rinsing her mouth and wiping her face. When she turned around, Ryan was already training the next volunteer. Iris suddenly approached, looking at her with a mournful expression. Diana felt her scalp tingling. What's wrong? I give up. What? I'm not pursuing Ryan anymore. She looked completely dejected. I didn't lose to you. I lost to my own vomit. Diana couldn't help but laugh. Ryan has probably seen this many times and won't mind. But he minds about you. Ha. Iris looked envious. He treats us all the same, leaving us to fend for ourselves. Only when you came out did he immediately offer you a vomit bag and mouthwash. He knows you care about your image, so he made you the most dignified vomiter among us. That ice mountain even noticed such small details. If this isn't love, I'll live stream myself doing a handstand and eating. Diana's heart fluttered. You're overthinking it. Iris looked at her jealously. I'll bet you with my 38 ex-boyfriends that he definitely likes you. Diana's cheeks flushed, and she quickly ran away. Iris watched her back and made a face. She was clearly afraid of embarrassing herself in front of him too. Diana, oh Diana, you don't even realize it yourself. But you're falling. The days of closed training were monotonous, and the training content became more and more challenging to the limits of the human body. If they couldn't pass the assessment at the end of the 6-month training period, they would be eliminated from the deep space program. Iris complained every day, and Diana also struggled to adapt. Her physical condition wasn't good, and training was very difficult for her every day. She even stayed behind to do extra training at night. Iris held a lunchbox, eating heartily while watching her practice vestibular training exercises in the training room, shaking her head repeatedly. Honey, with this kind of perseverance, You can succeed at anything. Seeing Diana's slender waist, jealousy instantly filled her eyes. Damn it. You're treating the deep space program like a weight loss camp. Your waist is a few inches thinner than when you first came. Diana had just completed a short set of exercises, closing her eyes to wait for the dizziness to pass, and mumbled, I can't help it. I throw up every time I eat during this training. I'd rather go hungry. Iris angrily stuffed another big bite into her mouth. Training will only be half as effective without sufficient nutrition. A low male voice suddenly sounded, almost choking Iris' cough. Ryan. Diana instinctively wanted to stand up straight, but when she let go of the wall, she fell backwards. A pair of strong arms caught her. Careful. ## Chapter 16. The warmth enveloping her flushed her face. Iris whistled at them, tapping her lunchbox. Ryan glanced at her askance, and she wisely left. Diana felt a little embarrassed. Ryan, I can do it myself. Just as she was about to stand up straight, her scalp tightened, and she fell back onto his solid chest. A strand of hair had gotten caught in his zipper. Don't rush. Let me. His large, rough hands were surprisingly gentle as he carefully untangled each strand of hair. For some reason, Diana thought of her mother. When she was little, her mother would use her nimble hands to braid her hair into various styles. After her mother passed away, Alberto had tried to braid her hair, but she had too much hair, and he was clumsy at it. He would either hurt her, or the braids would be loose and messy. She simply cut her hair short, and kept it that way for several years until she started growing it out again in college, leaving it to professional stylists to manage. She had never imagined that anyone else could tame her unruly, voluminous hair so neatly. After separating the zipper in her hair, Ryan looked at the little girl standing blankly in front of him. So well-behaved, his heart softened, and he asked her gently, Are there any problems with the training? Diana said somewhat dejectedly, I still can't adapt to the dizziness and weightlessness. Ryan smiled. Your movements just now weren't standard. Do it again, and I'll guide you. Diana began again under his guidance. Whether it was because the warm body behind her distracted her, she seemed to feel less dizzy. When the training ended, it was already 9:30 p.m. Just as Diana was about to thank him and return to the dormitory, her stomach made a loud rumbling sound. She awkwardly covered her stomach, wishing she could find a crack in the ground to disappear into. Ryan didn't tease her but waved to her. I saved some supper for you. Come and eat something. Diana hesitated for a few seconds, but ultimately couldn't resist the temptation of food and followed him. Ryan didn't take her to the cafeteria, but to a room she had never been to before. He fiddled with something on the wall, and the ceiling above them slowly parted, revealing a vast expanse of stars. Diana's mouth fell open, momentarily stunned. She had grown up in the city and had never seen such a vast and boundless starry sky. It was as if she were standing in the Milky Way, with billions of years flowing by her. It's beautiful. Ryan's lips curved into a smile. He led the dazed Diana to sit on a chair, the back of which automatically adjusted to a comfortable angle, allowing Diana to see everything without straining her neck. Just as she was about to ask where this was, a piece of braised beef was placed in her mouth. She unconsciously chewed a few times, and a rich aroma filled her mouth. Delicious. Plateau yak beef. It's high in protein, which helps with muscle synthesis and improves immunity. Ryan placed the beef in her hand. Don't skip meals for training in the future. You won't be able to board the spacecraft if your weight isn't up to standard. Diana secretly looked at his profile as he gazed at the stars, a hint of sweetness rising in her heart. Thank you, Ryan. Eating braised beef under the starry sky at an altitude of 4,988 meters was truly a magical life experience. Ryan, is this room specifically for stargazing? Yes. You'll also come here for training in a while. Diana, having eaten her fill and relaxed, asked out of curiosity, Ryan, why did you join the deep space program? Does your family support you? Ryan was silent for a moment and then said, My mother passed away when I was 14. Diana was startled and quickly said, I'm sorry. No need to apologize. It's been many years. Ryan glanced at her and then looked back at the stars. At that time, I had to go to my father, who who had been divorced from my mother for many years. And I also transferred to a new school. There, I met a little girl who had also lost her mother. She told me that after people die, they turn into stars in the sky, watching over their loved ones on Earth. So I must live well, so that the stars won't be sad, and they won't fall. She also said that she wanted to be an astronaut in the future and ride a spacecraft to see her mother. And she asked me to go with her. Although it was a wild idea, I was unconsciously infected by her, and I felt that my mother hadn't left me, but had changed her way of watching over me. Diana couldn't help but smile. So you came? What about her? Did she become an astronaut? Ryan said gently, she will succeed. Our promise will soon be realized. Diana was already feeling sleepy. That's wonderful. Ryan, your wishes will all come true. Ryan looked at her profile and murmured, yours too. ## Chapter 17. Under Ryan's guidance, Diana's training had made significant progress. Their relationship also grew closer day by day. Ryan always stayed at a comfortable distance, giving her just the right amount of care without making her feel any pressure. She unknowingly became accustomed to his presence, and their nightly extra training and meals became a regular routine. Iris's private late-night chats also became bolder and bolder. I saw Ryan's profile in the base office today. He's actually a Kampa. Diana blinked. A minority? No wonder his features are more pronounced than ordinary people's. Iris poked her playfully with a mischievous smile. I heard that Kampa men are all naturally gifted. Little Diana, have you tried it yet? Diana was first stunned, then her face flushed crimson, and she repeatedly waved her hands. What nonsense are you talking about? How would I know? You don't know. You often come back late at night. Do you think I haven't noticed? Don't tell me it's training. If you trained until midnight every day, you'd be a spinning top by now. Diana was momentarily speechless. She wanted to say that they were just stargazing, but saying that seemed to confirm the ambiguous relationship. She suddenly realized that her relationship with Ryan had already gone beyond the ambiguity of friendship. No wonder Iris would make wild guesses. But she didn't have any plans to develop a romantic relationship for the time being. The previous relationship had ended so miserably that she no longer had the heart for it. That if Ryan really had those intentions towards her, she should stop it in time. But the thought of distancing herself from him made her feel uneasy. She pulled the blanket over her head in frustration and didn't sleep well all night. For the next few days, she declined Ryan's dinner invitations. Ryan seemed to understand her meaning and didn't say anything, simply bidding her farewell after training. Without his initiative, they returned to the most ordinary instructor-trainee relationship. Diana breathed a sigh of relief, but also felt a sense of emptiness in her heart. One morning, while everyone was training, the entire base suddenly went dark. There was a power outage. Ryan organized the trainees to leave the training area in an orderly manner, made a few phone calls, and stopped Diana, who was walking past him. The solar power storage panel is broken. I need an assistant to go out and repair it with me. Will you go? As if possessed. She nodded. The broken storage panel was on a snowy mountain. The two put on their gear and set off, wading through knee-deep snow. Diana was short and had short legs, making it difficult for her to walk. Ryan didn't even turn his head back, but accurately took her hand. Diana was startled. Ryan simply pulled her forward. Walk faster. The weather hasn't been good recently. I'm afraid it will get windy later. Okay. Diana suppressed her quickening heartbeat and followed him up the mountain. The storage panel hung on a cliff. Ryan put on his safety rope and climbed up with the toolbox on his back. Diana watched with trepidation, unconsciously tightening her grip on the safety rope. Ryan, be careful. Ryan looked up and saw her worried expression. He smiled. Relax. Don't look at me. Look behind me. Diana looked up and was immediately stunned. The sunlight broke through the clouds and shone on the continuous snow-capped mountains, outlining a golden edge. It had been 5 months since she entered the mountains, and this was the first time she had seen the golden summit sunrise. It was breathtakingly beautiful. The most beautiful scenery is often found in the most dangerous places. Adrenaline and dopamine often go hand in hand. Diana, now that you've come out, Don't just stare at the dangers at your feet. Look more at the scenery in the distance. Only then will this trip be worthwhile." Diana stared blankly at the magnificent and breathtaking scenery before her. For the first half of her life, she had been cautious and trapped in Alberto's world, walking on thin ice. That was why she had regarded him as her only salvation. She thought she had already escaped, but she was still habitually trapped in the present, not daring to look to the future. In fact, her world could be vast. Everything within sight was part of her life experience. She greedily looked at the continuous mountains and the rolling sea of clouds. Suddenly, her vision was blocked by a firm, slender waist. The tight-fitting, quick-drying shirt outlined the powerful lines of his abdominal muscles. That Iris's voice inexplicably echoed in her mind. "I heard that Kampa men are all naturally gifted. Little Diana, have you tried it yet?" Her gaze unconsciously drifted downwards and stopped at a certain point. Then, her face gradually turned red. "What are you thinking, Diana?" She was startled awake and met Ryan's half-smiling expression. "And nothing." Ryan raised his chin. "Hand me the wrench." "Oh." Diana obediently acted as his assistant, while scolding herself inwardly that she needed to stay away from Iris. When the storage panel was repaired, the sun was covered by clouds again, and the wind picked up on the mountain. Ryan looked at the sky and urged, "Let's go down the mountain quickly. The weather is about to change." Diana quickly packed up her gear and proactively and obediently took his hand. Ryan was stunned for a moment, a trace of a smile flashing in his eyes. The wind and snow grew heavier and heavier, and the two stumbled forward. Diana, anxious, suddenly lost her footing and fell straight down. Ryan. ## Chapter 18. Ryan, with quick reflexes, grabbed her. Diana hung precariously on the edge of an ice crevasse, with a bottomless chasm below her. "Look at me. Don't look down." Diana looked at Ryan's tense face, tears welling up in her eyes. "Ryan, I'm scared." Ryan's heart trembled, and he comforted her gently. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." That one sentence miraculously soothed the unease in Diana's heart. It was as if as long as he was there, all problems could be solved. Ryan held his breath and slowly pulled Diana upwards. The ice crevasse was smooth, with little friction, making it very difficult to pull someone up. It took a full 10 minutes for Diana to be pulled to safety. She still held onto Ryan's hand, too terrified to let go. Ryan patted her head. "It's all right, Diana." She felt a strong urge to cry when she felt a few drops of warm liquid on her hand. She was startled. No, she hadn't even started crying yet. Looking down, she saw that the bright red liquid had spread across her entire palm. It was blood. Diana's gaze followed the blood upwards, and tears instantly streamed down her face. "Ryan, your arm." In the emergency, when Ryan fell to save her, his arm had been stabbed by an ice spike. He hadn't cared about the pain. His only thought was to save her. The harder he pulled, the deeper the ice spike went. By the time he had pulled Diana up, blood was flowing profusely down his arm. So much blood. "Ryan, are you in pain? Did it pierce an artery?" Ryan's heart trembled at her crying. "Don't cry. I'm not in pain. It's cold. The blood will clot quickly." A gust of fierce wind swept past, and the snow stung both of their eyes. "A blizzard is coming. Diana, we need to find a place to take shelter." Ryan looked around and led Diana to sit behind a wind-sheltered snowdrift. Diana wiped away her tears and found the safety rope to tie around his arm. But the blood was still flowing continuously. She frantically called the base for help. "Ryan is injured. He's lost a lot of blood. The blizzard is too heavy. We can't get out. We're at..." Ryan sighed and took the walkie-talkie. 200 meters down from Goddess Peak, about 80 meters west, at Snowdrift number 2. "He may have pierced an artery. The bleeding won't stop." "Yes, please hurry." After turning off the walkie-talkie, Diana, still with red eyes, stared at his arm, as if just looking at it could stop the bleeding. Ryan hesitated for a few seconds, then raised his hand and gently covered her eyes. "Don't look. Blizzards come and go quickly. The people at the base are experienced. They'll be here soon." Diana's eyelashes lightly brushed against his palm, as if brushing against his heart. sending a tingling sensation through him. Having lost too much blood, Ryan began to feel dizzy, leaning weakly against the rock wall. Seeing him so weak, Diana panicked. "Ryan, don't sleep. Keep your eyes open. You said the blizzard would pass quickly. Why hasn't it stopped yet? Ryan, don't die. You shouldn't have saved me." Ryan, with his eyes closed, smiled weakly and murmured, "How could I not save you? I've waited for you for so many years." Diana sobbed uncontrollably. What are you saying?" Ryan couldn't bear to hear her cry anymore and coaxed her, recalling the past. Mingda Middle School, the rooftop during PE class. "You little heartless thing. Have you forgotten?" Diana's thoughts turned back 10 years, and she suddenly stopped. "You're Dorj?" Diana was completely stunned, unable to connect the tall, burly man in front of her with the dark, thin boy from back then. She used to hide on the rooftop during PE class and would always meet Dorj, a Tibetan boy who had transferred from Tibet. Dorj didn't talk much, but their shared loneliness made Diana feel a sense of closeness and pity for the boy. She had her uncle's love, helping her step by step out of the pain of losing her mother. So she also tried to comfort and encourage Dorj, hoping he could live well. A year later, Dorj graduated from middle school, and the two lost contact. He was just a passerby in her life, but he had kept her in his heart for many years. Even his university choices were influenced by her, choosing aeronautics and astronautics. Ryan's voice gradually faded. "I changed my Han name, thinking I would never see you again. Who knew that during my 3rd year of university, you would also be admitted to my school, becoming my direct junior. I was so happy and wanted to find you immediately, but you had forgotten me. You seemed no longer interested in the universe. Your heart and eyes were filled with another man. He treated you very well, and you were very happy. I thought that was good too. You were living a stable life, and I was happy for you." His voice became lower and lower, almost inaudible. Diana's tears poured out, and she threw herself into his arms, choking back sobs. "Hold on. Ryan, how do you know I won't give you a response? Stay alive. Ryan, I need you to stay alive." Ryan moved his fingers with difficulty and gently stroked her hair. "Okay, I'll stay alive." Chapter 19. As soon as the blizzard stopped, the base's rescue team arrived. Ryan was ice cold, his face as white as paper. Diana wasn't sure if he was still alive. She waited outside the operating room for 3 hours before Ryan was finally pushed out. He was out of danger, but his arm had suffered muscle tears and would need time to recover. If it didn't heal within a month, he wouldn't be able to go to the space station. Diana was stunned, looking at the pale man on the hospital bed, her lips pressed tightly together. "Tell me what kind of care he needs. Ryan couldn't be stranded here. He was a man of the sky." Diana began learning massage techniques from the doctor every day. A week later, Ryan's wound had healed, and she gave him massage rehabilitation every day at the appointed time. As soon as it was time, Diana would appear at the instructor's office with her care kit. The teaching assistants teased, "Ryan, your little nurse is here again." Diana had gone from blushing crimson to maintaining an unchanged expression. She walked up to Ryan, her small face serious. "You're late, Ryan." Ryan gestured to the documents in his hand. "Just a little more. I'll come find you when I'm done." Diana pursed her lips and looked at him without speaking. He compromised and raised his hands. Okay, I'll go." The teaching assistant snickered. Even the fearless Iron Man Ryan has a weakness. It's true that one thing conquers another. That's right. Even the hardest steel can't withstand gentle fingers. "Is our base going to have a wedding?" Hearing the whispers behind her, Ryan raised his eyebrows. The two walked into the stargazing room. Diana skillfully lowered the seat, tore off the old plaster, applied medicinal oil, and began the massage. Ryan looked at her serious expression and couldn't help but tease her. "Diana, my reputation has been completely ruined by you." Diana paused but didn't speak. Ryan also stopped smiling. "Just a joke. Don't mind it. I'll tell them to shut up later. Ryan, let me think about it." Diana looked up at him, her tone very serious. "Before the end of the closed training, I'll give you an answer." Actually, she knew in her heart that she was probably falling in love with Ryan. However, She didn't know if she was once again treating Ryan as a salvation, just like she had with Alberto in the beginning. She didn't want to fall into such a relationship of losing herself again. She needed to sort out her thoughts. Ryan's expression was gentle. Okay, take your time. Neither of them spoke. After the rehabilitation was completed, the two came out of the stargazing room and met a group of people face to face. It was the base's owner, bringing investors for a tour. One of the men saw Diana and looked pleasantly surprised. Diana, you're really here. I've been looking for you for so long. Diana was stunned. It was Alberto. Why was he here? Alberto was slightly out of breath. The immense joy made the already thin air at the high altitude even thinner. Ever since he learned that Diana had joined the deep space program, he had ignored his family's objections and insisted on joining. But he had angina and failed the physical examination. Later, he found many ways to invest in the project, but the owner was too low-key. He had asked around for a long time before finally getting in touch, and only now did he have the opportunity to visit the base. Alberto walked quickly to Diana and took her hand, saying excitedly, Diana, come back with me. I've taken care of everything at home. From now on, it will only be you and me. We'll live a good life together. Diana, seeing the strange looks from the others, forcefully pulled her hand away and then pushed open the door of the stargazing room. Let's talk inside. Alberto followed her into the room. As the door was about to close, Ryan grabbed it. Alberto narrowed his eyes at him. Diana said softly, It's okay. I'll explain things to him. Ryan looked at her for a few seconds and said, I'll be right outside. Diana nodded and closed the door. Who is he? Alberto immediately asked. Is it because of him that you won't come back? Diana frowned. Uncle, I've already made it very clear last time. I should live my own life. Alberto stared blankly at her. Your own life? Is a life without me? Diana, you said we would be together forever. Diana lowered her head. Uncle, you were the one who changed first. Alberto's eyes instantly turned red. I didn't change. Diana, I figured it out. In this lifetime, I only want to be with you. Can only be with you. No one else is important. I was just mistaken for a while. Diana, I'm very sorry for what happened before. It was all my fault. I've already sent Ines away. From now on, I'll only have you, only cherish you. If you want to get married, we'll get married. He took a step closer, his eyes red. I'll give you whatever you want. Can you not leave me? Your uncle really can't live without you. Diana had never seen him like this. In her memory, Alberto had always been high-spirited, unrestrained, and free, but now, he had lost a lot of weight. His face was haggard, and his expression was full of sorrow. Diana suddenly realized that this relationship had brought them more pain than happiness. She sighed. Uncle, I've changed. I don't love you anymore. Alberto seemed to have suffered a huge blow, his eyes dull, his cheeks twitching slightly, standing there in despair. You don't love me anymore? How can you not love me? Diana, you were the one who proposed to me. You were the one who wanted to be with me forever. I just made a small mistake. How can you not love me? He clutched his chest, his face pale, swaying as if he would fall at any moment. Diana felt something was wrong and went forward to support him. Uncle, what's wrong? Is it your angina? Alberto held her hand tightly, using all his strength, staring intently at her. Diana, you still love me, right? You're just angry, right? Please, don't be so cruel to me. Diana forcefully pulled her hand away to call for help. As soon as she turned around, Alberto fell straight to the ground. Uncle. Chapter 20. Alberto was sent down the mountain overnight. His physical condition did not allow him to be on the plateau in the first place, but he had insisted on coming to find Diana. Pilwell was furious. You've been making a fool of yourself for half a year, and now you almost lost your life. Do you remember that you are the head of the Chin group? You bear the responsibility of the Alberto clan. Look at how you've ruined your body. All for a woman. You can mess around all you want, but the Alberto clan cannot be destroyed in your hands. While I can still move, you must give me an heir this year. Alberto lay in bed, dazed. Have a child. Besides Diana, who was qualified to bear his child. But they couldn't have children. They were in the middle of the night. The ward door was pushed open, and a woman walked in. Old Master Chin said that considering your years of unrequited love for the young master, he's giving you one last chance. You'd better seize it. Ines, wearing a thin slip dress, approached the bed step by step. In the months since the engagement was called off, she had been ridiculed by everyone, and the Jiang family's cooperation had been cut off, putting them in a difficult situation. She had begged countless people to see Alberto, but they had all turned her away. If he hadn't made such a fuss for Diana, respectable young ladies wouldn't want to get involved, and Puel wouldn't have given her this opportunity. As long as she gave birth to the Alberto clan's child, all difficulties would be resolved. Alberto wouldn't abandon her either. Ines silently lifted the blanket and reached out to unbutton Alberto's clothes. The next second, her hand was tightly gripped and flung backwards. The back of her head slammed into the wall, and a sharp pain swept through her. She screamed and fell to the ground. Alberto had already sat up, his sinister eyes fixed on her. Did I not tell you to get out of Jiangsheng and never appear before me again? Ines, tears in her eyes, looked at the man she had loved for so many years, her heart aching. Why can you be so cruel to me? I love you so much. Why can't you accept me? What kind of enchantment did that little vixen Diana put on you? Why can't you let her go? Shut up. Alberto grabbed a water glass and smashed it on the ground. The shards of glass cut Ines's cheek, and she looked at the furious man in despair. Alberto said word by word, "She is good in every way. You are not even worth a single strand of her hair." Ines lowered her head and suddenly began to laugh maniacally. Isn't she just a little vixen who seduced her uncle? Alberto, do you think I don't know about your relationship? Alberto froze, staring intently at her. What are you saying? Ines raised her head and screamed hysterically. I saw your investigation documents. You two are uncle and niece. How disgusting. You abandoned me, but were involved with your niece for 10 years. Alberto, what do you think will happen if the outside world finds out? What will happen to the Chin family? Alberto clenched his fists, his eyes bulging as he glared at Ines. I warn you, don't spread rumors. Or I. Spread rumors? Take a look at this. Ines took out a photo from her phone and showed it to Alberto. She had photographed all of Alberto's investigation reports, which clearly showed that Diana and Alberto's cousin were father and daughter. Don't worry, there's more. She continued to scroll through her phone, revealing screenshots of Diana's Weibo side account. In this account that Alberto didn't even know about, Diana recorded all her secret crushes and proposal diaries. From the age of 15 to 22, it recorded her entire youthful heart. What should have been their beautiful memories had now become Ines's blackmailing capital. She grinned grimly. Marry me, or I'll expose all of this right now. Alberto, I have nothing to lose. But you have the Alberto clan's century-old foundation and the reputation of the woman you love. Do you dare to gamble with me? Alberto's whole body was tense as iron, wishing he could tear the crazy woman in front of him to pieces. But he had to admit that she had him. A person with nothing to lose feared nothing. But he had too many concerns. He had to stabilize her first. Fine. As long as you keep your mouth shut, I'll marry you. Ines spread her mouth triumphantly, half crying, half laughing. You won't be able to deceive me this time. I want you to personally announce to the whole world that you're going to marry me. The wedding should be as soon as possible, 100 times grander than the last time. I want to gloriously become the mistress of the Alberto clan. Alberto, we're still together. Alberto closed his eyes, and Diana's face appeared in the darkness. She hugged his neck and acted spoiled. Uncle can't abandon Diana. Diana wants to be with Uncle forever. Tears welled up in his eyes. Yes, we'll be together forever. ## Chapter 21 Overnight. All the media headlines were reporting on the marriage of the Chin and Jiang families. The wealthy couple who had broken up a year ago were rekindling their relationship, and netizens were enthusiastically following the drama. But Diana didn't care at all. She had finished her closed training and had boarded the Deep Space One spacecraft. Entering the space station, she, Ryan, and a boy named Chung Fei became the first group to enter the space station. For their health, they would return to Earth temporarily after 3 months to hand over to the next group. Their 3 months of weightless floating life would be broadcast live on the ground network via satellite cameras. Although Diana's picky eating habits had improved a lot at the base, she inevitably relapsed when faced with the limited food options in the space station. Until one day, Ryan took out a bag of strawberries during mealtime. Diana was stunned. "How do you have strawberries?" The food sent to the space station underwent strict quality control, and the primary requirement was low water content and easy storage. Strawberries were completely non-compliant. Ryan stuffed one into her mouth. "Is it sweet?" Diana took a bite, and her mouth was filled with sweetness. Ryan took her hand and floated with her to the vegetable cultivation area. Diana's eyes widened. "You actually grew strawberries?" Among a patch of leafy greens, the red strawberries were particularly pleasing. "Ryan, you're amazing." Diana couldn't help but hug him and kiss him hard. Before entering the cabin, she had agreed to be with Ryan. She was very sure that her feelings for Ryan were completely different from those for Alberto. She didn't simply want to rely on him. She also wanted to take care of him. Now that they were officially together, Diana was no longer awkward and boldly expressed her feelings. Ryan was dazed by her kiss, feeling that all the effort he had put into growing these strawberries was worth it. Netizens in the ground live broadcast room were frantically commenting that I knew there was something going on between them. The interaction is too sweet. This is too much. They're even spreading dog food in space. Someone call a director to film a space love story. Diana and the others couldn't see the live broadcast and didn't know that ground netizens had already created the Ryan and Diana CP. Their interactions unconsciously became sweeter and sweeter. Ryan couldn't bear to let her cut her long hair, so he took on all her hair washing duties. Diana couldn't bear to see Ryan turn into a Robinson Crusoe, so she regularly gave him haircuts and shaved his beard. Only poor Chung Fei had to do everything himself and was jokingly called a single dog by netizens in the live broadcast room. Everyone felt sorry for him being abused to the extreme. Work on the space station was very busy, and they had to work more than 12 hours a day. Ryan's arm couldn't take it anymore and started to hurt again. One night, as soon as Ryan lay down in his sleeping pod, Diana squeezed in. He raised his eyebrows and looked at her lazily. "What? Coming to offer yourself?" Diana unceremoniously twisted his arm, causing him to grimace in pain. "Stop pretending. If it hurts, why don't you say so?" She skillfully massaged him. Ryan wrapped his other arm around her waist to prevent her from floating away. Diana looked up. Ryan's face was very close. Outside the window was the vast starry sky. Ryan lowered his head and, in the vast universe, kissed his beloved girl Diana. I heard your mother speaking." Diana smiled. "What did she say?" "She said that her daughter's taste is much better than before." Hearing his subtle jealousy, Diana couldn't help but laugh. "Ryan, I also heard your mother speaking." "What did she say?" "She said that her son wasn't this shameless before." Ryan laughed, his chest vibrating against her face, looking very happy. "There's no other way. Little girls just like shameless guys. I can only cater to their preferences." Diana gently kissed his lips. "Yes, I just like you being so shameless." The live broadcast room was flooded with comments. "It's been half an hour. Their lips must be swollen from kissing. It's been an hour. They must have already had a baby. Wow. Did Diana just float a foot out and get pulled back in by Ryan? This explosive tension. Come on, kill me to add to their fun." Netizens were completely hooked. Only Alberto, with a pale face, watched Diana's live broadcast on a large screen in the villa's underground audiovisual room, his eyes filled with despair. "Diana, are you really not going to want your uncle anymore?" Chapter 22. 2 months passed in a flash, and it was almost the Lunar New Year. The space station also prepared a New Year's Eve dinner. All kinds of delicacies floated up and down, and the trio playfully threw dumplings at each other in the air. While the two men were engaged in a childish dumpling fight, Diana took out a plate from under the table. Ryan looked closely and saw that it was actually a strawberry cake. Diana smiled and said, "Happy birthday, Ryan." Ryan stared at her. He knew his birthday happened to fall on such a big day as Lunar New Year, so he had never celebrated his birthday since he was a child. He didn't expect that she would remember this. Diana held the cake in front of him and let go, letting it float. "The strawberries are grown by you, and the cake is made by me. Ryan, are you happy?" Ryan looked into her bright eyes, reached out, pulled her over, and kissed her deeply. The cake floated in front of the live broadcast camera. Netizens couldn't see it clearly, but they were still so excited that they sent the space cake kiss to the top of the trending searches. Alberto's image was projected on a huge electronic screen. He crushed the wine glass in his hand, the red wine mixed with the blood flowing down. But he didn't react at all, staring obsessively at the couple kissing passionately on the screen. His Diana was now someone else's. Could he really not salvage anything? With a click, the door lock opened, and Ines walked in, turning on the bright lights. Alberto's pupils contracted from the sudden light, and he said coldly, "Get out." Ines was drunk, looking around, crying and laughing. "Alberto, you're such a pervert. You actually filled the basement with photos of your niece. What am I worse than her? Tell me, why can't you look at me? We're already married. I'm your wife. You can't treat me like this." She cried and slumped to the ground. Alberto glanced at her indifferently. "If you dare come to this villa again, I'll release all those photos of yours." Ines looked at him resentfully, staggering as she walked out. Not long after they got married, Alberto had someone take nude photos of her playing outside, and now they were both holding on to each other's weaknesses to confront each other. The more she looked at the house, the angrier she became. When Diana left, she had cleaned up everything related to her. Alberto had actually found everything back, even planting the roses in the yard himself. One by one, the current villa was no different from how it looked when Diana lived there for 10 years. That he cared too much about that woman. Ines gritted her teeth in hatred. As long as Diana appeared, she would have no chance of winning. Alberto was willing to give her everything, thinking that the live broadcast said Diana and the others would return to Earth next month. Ines covered her lower abdomen, a trace of resentment flashing in her eyes. This woman could not be kept. She had to ruin her. Diana didn't expect that on the day she landed, she would be greeted by an overwhelming online storm. Ines, holding a pregnancy test and Diana's background investigation report, accused Diana live of interfering in her marriage and having an immoral relationship with her husband. A year ago, Diana ran away from home on our wedding day, and Alberto abandoned the wedding on the spot to find her. I thought their uncle-niece relationship was just very close, so I didn't blame them. I didn't expect Diana to be seducing men at such a young age, not even letting go of her own uncle. This is her secret crush diary posted on her side account. For 7 whole years, she has been fantasizing about her uncle. Alberto married me just to cover up their uncle-niece love, but I'm pregnant. I can't let my child grow up in such a distorted family. I beg you, Diana, give me back my husband and find someone who is truly suitable for you. In an instant, Diana went from being a space goddess to a pervert who had a crush on her uncle. Netizens frantically cursed her, and the base also temporarily suspended her duties under pressure. Diana stared blankly at the investigation report in Ines's hand. So her father was a member of the Alberto clan. She and Alberto were really related. Then all these years, hadn't she fallen in love with her own? Diana couldn't accept it, biting her lips until they bled. Ryan cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to relax. Diana, nothing is certain yet. Don't rush to convict yourself. Even if it's true, you're innocent. Diana was flustered and at a loss. What should I do? Ryan, what should I do? Ryan felt a pang of heartache and pulled her into his arms. His powerful heartbeat calmed her down a bit. Get a paternity test. Only this way can we know the truth. And if it's true, then you can completely let go of the past. Diana's panicked heart gradually calmed down. Ryan held her tightly. Don't be afraid. No matter what the result is, I'll be with you. Chapter 23. That afternoon, Diana took Ryan to Alberto's villa. Inside, Ines was making a scene. Alberto, why did you cut off my family's projects? The Alberto clan is already covered in dirt. Don't you want to clear your name? As long as you completely cut ties with Diana and live a good life with me, I'll tell the public that you were deceived. Only I can help you." Alberto's eyes were bloodshot, his face full of disgust. "Drag this woman out. Who dares? I'm carrying your child. Alberto, the Alberto clan's heir is in my belly." A cruel smile appeared on Alberto's lips. "Who told you that I was the one who slept with you on our wedding night?" Inés froze, her expression gradually turning to horror. "Inés, a woman like you is too dirty for me to even look at. How could I touch you? Besides, you were drunk and actively hugged that ex-boyfriend, calling my name. How disgusting." Inés broke down. "You're lying. My child is yours. Alberto, how can you slander me like this? I've loved you for 15 years. 15 years. Alberto coldly called the bodyguards. "Throw her back to the Jiang family and tell them to take her back to their hometown and not to abort the child. Since she loves this child so much, I want her to give birth and raise it herself." Inés was dragged out, screaming all the way, "Let go of me. I'm the mistress of the Alberto clan. The Alberto clan's heir is in my belly. Alberto, you'll die a horrible death." Diana was silent, walking with Ryan to Alberto. Alberto saw them and tried to force a smile, but it looked worse than a cry. "Uncle, I want to do a paternity test with you." Alberto seemed not to hear, staring intently at Ryan. After a long while, he asked in a hoarse voice, "Does he treat you well?" Diana nodded. "Very well. I like him very much." Alberto seemed to lose all his strength at once. "That's good. That's good." He sat on the sofa, letting Diana take a strand of his hair. When they were leaving, he suddenly called out to her, "Diana, you're braver than your uncle." When he first received the report, he wasn't without doubt, and he had thought about doing a test, but he didn't dare. He was afraid of confirming the truth, and feeling even more ashamed that so he preferred to push her away while deceiving himself and holding on to her. That was why things had come to this point that no matter the outcome, he had completely lost Diana. Diana was also afraid that Ryan was the one who looked at the test results for her. She knew everything was all right when she saw his smiling expression. She and Alberto were not related by blood. The big stone weighing on her heart finally fell. She used the test report to clarify things online. At the same time, Alberto exposed Inés's past bar escapades, nude photos, and evidence of hiring someone for kidnapping, causing a huge reversal in online opinion. After everything calmed down, Alberto had a long talk with Puel. Only then did he learn that he wasn't Paul's son. He was the son of Paul's first love. His first love passed away after giving birth to him, and Puel had taken him and Puel, who was usually stern and emotionless, was so stubborn that he gave the Alberto clan's fortune to his lover's child. This had also hurt his original wife and biological son, who left him and went abroad. After a long silence, Alberto decided to return the Chin group to Paul's eldest son, that he thought he could now meet Diana with a clear conscience. When he went to find Diana, he met her car halfway and quietly followed behind her. Diana drove all the way to Jinshan Temple, got out of the car, and walked up the 1,000 steps. Alberto followed closely behind that he saw her panting as she entered the temple, taking off the bracelet on her wrist and handing it to the abbot, asking him to reconsecrate and bless it. His eyes suddenly became wet. That was the bracelet Diana had gotten for him. She had carefully selected the wood, polishing each bead, and then climbed the 1,000 steps to sincerely pray for the abbot to consecrate it, to bless him with lifelong peace and success in everything. But he had let Inés tear it apart. Diana had searched on the ground all night before putting them back together. Now, she was giving the bracelet to someone else. Her thoughts, concerns, and love were all no longer related to him. He stood aside, watching Diana walk down the steps, at the bottom of the steps. A tall man walked up. They walked towards each other and left side by side. Alberto stared blankly until their figures completely disappeared. He took out a bead from his pocket, one that Diana hadn't found that day, left at home. He brought the bead to his lips and gently kissed it. Then, he took off the invaluable jade Buddha hanging around his neck and put on the bead. The warm wooden bead rested against his chest. Warm. This was the only thing he had that was related to Diana in this life. From now on, the vastness of life, the mountains and rivers, would only have him left.